Right, so this is Harshit Bhardwaj. I'm checking this copy by a student. The question is Satan the hero of Paradise Lost? Is Milton of Devil's Party without knowing it? That is Blake's quotation on not quotation quote on Paradise Lost. So the question is very straightforward. Is Satan the hero of Paradise Lost? Is Milton of Devil's Party without knowing it? That's the question. Read it 5 times. So when you know the question, the very first paragraph is the place where you present your argument right away, present your perspective right away. Is Satan the hero of Paradise Lost? I don't see you saying anything. Paradise Lost was written by Milton apparently to justify the ways of God to him, as Blake says. It turned out Satan being portrayed as the hero. Blake says that Satan became a hero. What is your perspective? They've asked you that. The second part of the question is Milton of Devil's Party without knowing it? That is Blake's quote. So what do you have to say on it? You're saying nothing on it. This is the biggest blunder of answer writing. You do not attack the question right away. You do not present your argument. You're not answering the question at all. You're just rephrasing the question. Where is your perspective? Where is your argument? And then you're doing exactly what most students do. You are you just started summarizing the poem. The poem opens with Satan being thrown out and blah 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 blah. You continue doing that. I have because you have not started with the argument. What you're trying to prove in your answer. You only have 250 words maximum, 300. Do you expect me to read your entire answer and then figure out what you're trying to prove or trying to say? If that's what you expect the examiner to do, invigilator to do, then you're not going to get any marks. The material that you've used in your answer is good material. Your understanding of the text is there. So you might get maybe 5 out of 15 marks. But because the structure is wrong, you have to start with the argument right away. What do you think? Is Satan the hero of Paradise Lost? Yes, no, maybe. What is your argument on that? Is Milton of Devil's Party without knowing it? How do you tackle that? And that argument becomes your argument. This is what you're going to prove. And then you add relevant references from the text to back your argument. That becomes the rest of your answer. Right now, the rest of your answer is a summary. I don't know what you're trying to prove, right? Even the conclusion does not prove anything. The conclusion is not conclusive. Is Satan the hero of Paradise Lost? The conclusion does not say anything substantial, confident about it. Does it make sense? What ways of God to men Milton ponders upon in Paradise Lost? Paradise Lost, being an epic poem, ponders on the question of theodicy. That is why is there evil in the world? Milton tries to answer this question in several ways. Okay, this is again a very weak argument. I when I read it, I don't know what you're trying to say. How does he? So the question is, what ways of God to men Milton ponders upon? So in your first paragraph or in your intro, you should be giving us a few examples right away that with this, Milton is pondering upon ways of God to men. So you're just saying several ways. So the first paragraph, the story of war in heaven and throwing out of Satan and his fellow angels, sets the plot as to why Satan chooses to wreak havoc on humanity. Okay, everything you write after the first intro argument has to back your argument of the question. What ways of God to man? So we are not going to talk about Satan. Why Satan wreak havoc on humanity? That's not the concern here. The concern is how he proves the ways of God to men. So the clarity in the first page is absolutely missing. You understand what I'm saying? I'm looking at it from an objective point of view. Obviously, you've written this answer, there's so much you've written. But you're not tackling the answer question. This way, through this epic poem, Milton deals with the question of feudalism. Not answered. You haven't answered the question. Why was Eve instructed to stay away from the tree of knowledge, and what happened to it her after she ate the forbidden fruit? In book 9 of Paradise Lost, Milton brings forth the event to follow. Again, you start with a general summary, building up the context. Come straight to the point, mate. Why was Eve instructed to stay away from the tree of knowledge, and what happened to her after? We don't need the background of this event. We know the background. You have to presume that we know the story, we have read it. We are both equally, you know, educated on this poem. Now I'm asking you why she was instructed to stay away and what happened when she crossed the line. That's where your answer should start. Right away. Is it that difficult? The question is there. And I'm expecting you in the first couple of paragraphs, the first paragraph ideally, to answer that question. Present your argument. What you're again summarizing, mate. You're just paraphrasing what happened. We need your critical insights, critical opinion, and why do you think she was instructed to stay away? There is one literal reason for that. That is in the poem, and then we expect you to drive critical assessment on why, in the first place, she was asked to stay away. Is it something to do with disobedience and obedience? Is it something? What is it? Do you think that the great theme of Paradise Lost is unquestioning obedience to the behests implicit in the creative order of an omnipotent God discussed in light of contemporary Puritan philosophy? Unlike Puritan philosophy, which rests on unbending morality with no criticality, the theme of Paradise Lost blends free will with the path of enlightenment. Okay, this is closer to what I want you to write, because this is where you are tackling the question right away. You're taking a stance. Whether it's right or wrong depends upon the the quality and relevance and appropriateness of your argument, references and examples. So you're saying Milton is blending free will with the path of enlightenment. So it's not simply about obedience and bending to the authorities. God, when created his children Adam and Eve, he did not make that his mere pawns. He gave them free will to choose between right and wrong. For instance, when he asks them not to eat the forbidden fruit, he gives them thinking mind to decide over it. That's a good point. God, this is very blur. Everything is still at free will. In this way, he gives the poem. You have to, whenever you're talking about free will and that God gave them this option, you have to go back to that instance in book 4, I think, where God is talking to Jesus and he predicts the fall of man, right? So that connects that God left the door open for them and he was hoping, not hoping, but he knew somehow that they would exercise discretion. This is a better answer because it sticks to the argument that you presented in the intro. And if you go back and you read your first paragraph and the last paragraph, they agree. The conclusion agrees to the argument you presented in the first paragraph. So This is like if I were to give marks out of 10, this is like 5.5, 5 or 5.5. This is a safe answer. It does not digress, it sticks to the point, but it can you can bring in a lot more to this answer and make it a 7 or 6. But this is not a bad answer. This is a good template to follow because the as I said, the argument in the intro and the conclusion they agree. So it forms a full circle. That proves that you have traveled in this answer in a logically straight line. You haven't digressed. You did not start from somewhere and ended somewhere else. Most of the answers, you're not taking a confident, solid start. Do you agree that Wordsworth is a poet, philosopher? Though Wordsworth is considered one of the founders of Romantic movement in English literature, he also dwelled on philosophical themes like the nature of soul, afterlife, and such. So again, the question remains: do you agree that Wordsworth is a poet philosopher? What you've written does not confidently, clearly, concisely, succinctly tell me whether you agree or not. You're just saying he also dwelled. So what does that mean? Do you agree he is a poet philosopher, or it is just one part of his personality? Or he is written in a variety of topics and subjects, and philosophical poems are just one part of his entire canon? Because your argument does not sit in any one stance. So now you give ideas of. So what you're saying is yes, Wordsworth has written about philosophical topics, but I am not sure that he can be termed poet philosopher. But he has written about some philosophical topics which I'm going to talk about. Right? So it sits unsure. This is an unsure argument. You know what I'm saying? You have to take a stance, very solid. You cannot be seen in two minds. And sometimes students are confident about what they think, but the writing does not support that. So in your writing, you have to be very clear, simply very clear. Now the examples you're giving, immortality of soul, good example. Add some quotes to it, and celestial light, yes, good example. Tintin Abbey, he talks about soul music, childhood, all fine, all fine. In Michael, he speaks of importance of hope. Yes. So these are the several ways in which the he proves he is not on a romantic. He is not on a romantic poet, but a philosopher with poetic muse. Now you are slightly more confident. You're saying he is not a romantic poet, but a philosopher. You could phrase it a little better that he dealt with romantic themes, but with a philosophical bent of mind. So it would be fair to say that Wordsworth is a poet philosopher. That makes it a more confident idea. Wordsworth's poetry exhibits romantic characteristics, and for his treatment towards romantic element, he stands supreme, and he can be termed a romantic poet for a number of reasons. Examine some poems prescribed in your syllabus. So this is a very straightforward question. You just have to prove why he is a romantic poet. Again, the intro is very generalistic. I absolutely hate generalistic intros. Okay, this is a very weak and incomplete answer. You have to read about what makes a romantic poet or what are the features of romantic poetry in Wordsworth. Nature is one. Can you see an essence of Indian philosophy? Okay. Okay, this is a sharp intro, clean, succinct, precise. Pantheism, Um, immortality of the soul. Okay, this is not bad. Preface to lyrical ballads was a poetry, but spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings and an emotion developed in tranquility. So how apparent contradiction. Okay, this spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions recollected in tranquility. What does this mean actually? A lot of students are confused about it and why there is an apparent contradiction in Tintin Abbey or anywhere this idea is applied. So spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions, powerful feelings. So when you are in nature or when you are overpowered by your feelings for whatever reason, in Wordsworth's poetry, it's mostly nature or sometimes grief or loss of a loved one, like in Lucy Combs. So spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. A poet experiences those spontaneous overflow. Spontaneous as in there are numerous feelings. But a lesser poet, a lower poet, would try to capture those spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings right away. And this is what most of us do. When we are touched by an emotion or we are overpowered or overflowing with any emotion, we write poetry or we write. What Wordsworth's idea is that you do not write those feelings because at that time you are biased and your mind is emotional. You cannot think objectively. You cannot write like a poet. So when he revisits the River Wye, the same spot in Tintin Abbey after 5 years, that's when he writes the poem because he experiences the same emotions again. That means one, those feelings are true, and two, now separated by time, he can experience them objectively. So when you look at something from far, something that happened last year, and you think about it now, the memory of those feelings, can you recollect those feelings? Can you recollect those emotions? That is a proof whether those emotions were strong enough or they were simply transient. They were simply bubbles. So a true poet always comes back, looks back, and tries to recollect those emotions later in tranquility. Tranquility when your mind is absolutely still, not overpowered or overflowed, flown by the emotions. It is still. So when in the state of tranquility you recall those emotions, can you still recall them? Do you still feel them? Then you write them. That's where poetry happens. This is what he's doing in Tintin Abbey. Okay. So I think this will give you a lot of idea to correct what is wrong. Always think hard and long about the first argument that you're presenting, and then you present your proof, references, examples from the text to back, and be as clear as possible in the first part, the intro part, the first paragraph. Attack the question, present your argument.